Still in your feelings.
You got this shit knocking on.
If you love wisdom, put your mind up to the ceiling. Don't let it stay in the gutter. Don't let your heart get all cluttered. No, I did not stutter. Listen to all that I've muttered. Your life will only go well if you win wisdom or lovers.
You're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
You and I. You and I.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
Alright, what's going on? And welcome back. You are listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And we are on hour 2 of the show. So on the first hour, I was joined by special guest Jamel. And we are going to continue the conversation on the wisdom of generosity. Alright, so we're going to take a look at what that word generosity actually means. We're also going to take a look at what some notable people have to say about it and what the Bible has to say about it too. You don't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside.
Hey, what's going on, Wisdom family? Each week on For the Love of Wisdom, we promote a new and free audiobook that we believe you will benefit from and become wiser by listening to. On today's show, we're talking about the wisdom of generosity. And so, the recommended book for this week is Give and Take, A Revolutionary Approach to Success by Adam Grant. This book is about how people who give are prone to achieve extraordinary success. To download this free book today, just visit audibletrial.com/lovewisdom. audibletrial.com/lovewisdom.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And we are live on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. We're here every Thursday from 4 to 6. So today we are talking about the wisdom of generosity. And again, if you want to join the conversation, you can either hit me up on Twitter or on Instagram. On Instagram, just look up One Plan Media. One Plan Media. Just look that up and you can join the conversation that way. So let's take a look at what some of the headlines have to say. And real quick before that, just a quick recap in case you missed it. During the first hour, we were talking about what it means to be generous. So we did a word study. We learned what the word generous means. And then we also took a look at a personality quiz. It was a generosity personality quiz. So we are able to take that and discover how generous we are or are not, right? So if you want to see how you would score on that, just go to look up Am I Generous Personality Quiz on Google. And the website is going to be ProProfs. It's on proprofs.com. So the website title, that they have on there is pretty lengthy, so it'd be easier to find just doing a Google search. All right, so right now we are going to take a look at some of the headlines. Here's the first one. The Lucanville family, they're overwhelmed by generosity from their community. All right, so let's see what it has to say. This is an article. This was actually just written today by Anna Velasquez. And here's what she had to say. Lewiston ID. New developments on an online fundraiser for a local Lewiston couple. A goal of $10,000 has almost been reached. So why are people trying to raise money for this couple here? Well, it says people have donated just over $9,000 to the GoFundMe account for Marty and Sherry Lucanville in about a day. And here's the reason why. It says that their daughter set it up for them on Monday after their house went up in flames, right? So they actually were involved in a house fire. So it looks like they pretty much lost everything. And so what they're saying is this is, something that's very important because they're in need of help, as you would be too. If that happened to you. And it says, of course, you can't replace everything, but cash speaks, right? And giving them a step up, it's very important. And that's what we're looking for as Elks members and the community at large. So this is pretty cool that this community came together to raise some money for this family. And basically, this says that they're going to be having a fundraiser on Saturday at the Lewiston Elks Lodge on Country Club Drive. So if you're in that area, definitely, stop by, see if you can help out. Sounds like it's a great cause. And it's awesome when people come together to help one another, right? It's a good thing, because in this world, when we have so many people who are focused on self, it's really refreshing to see people coming together to help one another. And it's that right there is just a reminder too, I believe, that there is a God in this world. For people who question that and they say, well, all this evil stuff happens, how can I believe in God? But one evidence for that is when you see people coming together for the common good, people coming together to, help others. So that's an awesome thing. Definitely an awesome thing. And let's take a look now. We're gonna take a look at another article here, and this one is really good. This one is definitely really good. This one here says, how does generosity benefit health? It's a brain study. So that's pretty cool, actually. When you think about it, this is a brain study on, basically how being generous affects people. So let's take a look. It says a new study suggests that different types of generosity have different effects on the brain, and that one form in particular may reduce stress and anxiety. And it says the warm glow effect describes the pleasant sensation that we get from helping others. And the theory around it suggests that the main reason behind all acts of generosity is just the fact that they make us feel good. So not only is being generous good because it is just the right thing to do, but this is actually saying that there is a neurological response to doing good towards others. It's actually good for our brains, right? So it says that one such study showed that generosity does make us happier, and it confirmed this by highlighting the brain regions that are involved. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. Also, the article says that humans thrive off of social connections and benefit when they act in service of others' well-being. However, the effect of targeted giving on the septal area together with the amygdala suggests a neural pathway by which giving support ultimately influences health that is specific to targeted forms of support giving, such as giving to specific people we know are in need. Now, that's pretty wordy, but basically they sum it up by saying that giving targeted support to an identifiable individual in need is uniquely associated with reduced amygdala activity, thereby contributing to understanding of how and when giving support may lead to health. So this is really good article. I would recommend checking it out if you get the chance. You can look that up. It's on Medical News Today. medicalnewstoday.com. That's where you can find that article. It was just published about a week ago. All right, so let's look at one more before we go to break. And this article, it was written by Adam Grant, who is actually the writer of the book of the week. And this article he wrote with Reb Rebel, and it's called Beat Generosity Burnout. Now, I think it's important to discuss the balance with this, because we talk about generosity and the importance of it. But one thing that they're really trying to highlight here is that it's not only good to be generous, but we also have to keep a balance with it, because you don't want to burn yourself out in the process. Because if you do that, then you're going to reach a point where you don't want to be generous anymore. Right. And this is something that happens to people who are givers. A lot of times people who give to other people who don't usually have a problem with that, they reach a point where they can get exhausted. And if they don't give themselves enough rest, if they don't give themselves enough balance, and if they are not able to receive from the people who are in their lives, then they're going to end up being burnt out. And so this is what they have to say about that. Selflessness at work leads to exhaustion and often hurts the very people you want to help. And that's the key right there, because this is saying basically you want to do a good thing, right? You want to help people. However, if you burn yourself out, you're not going to be able to help anybody, right? Because you are going to be in need of help at that point. And so it says, when the leaders of the world dispense advice to the next generation, they tend to emphasize the same message. So, it's all about helping others, which is good because that's what we're talking about today. But it must be done with balance. All right. So on Instagram Live, we got a response here from Mr. Sprouse. And he says that Denzel Washington said in the video just yesterday, he just watched a video that said that it's the best way to be selfish because the self-gratification that comes from kindness and generosity. So that is very true. That is very true, actually, because sometimes people do things to be seen, right? They do things so that other people will say, wow, this is such a good person. This is such an honorable person. Wow, this is, an amazing person. But that should never be the motivation for giving to someone. Because if that is the motivation, well, ultimately that's going to come out. Because if you're doing it for the wrong reason, you're going to be burnt out really quick. But more on that after this. You're listening to North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you.
It's your boy, Tear It Up, Tommy Tom from Beyond Sports, and you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom
with your host, Jason Johnson.
All right, what's going on, y'all? Welcome back. You were listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. All right, and today we are talking about the wisdom of generosity. During the break, we had a response here, and it says, personally, I feel it's most important to stay humble and find that balance between selfishness and selflessness. So I think that is very true. And, one thing that I mentioned on there too is that, with finding that balance, we have to make sure that in being, selfless or being humble, that we don't get into the realm of false humility, right? Because some people, it's for them, it's not about actually being humble. It's about appearing to be humble, right? So that's not good either, right? We don't want to be doing stuff just for a show, just so that people can say, wow, that is a humble person. Like, you go to somebody's house and they offer you some food and it's like, oh no, I'm not worthy of eating food, right? I could never do that. But it's like, okay, if you can say that all you want, but at some point you are going to get hungry, right? So why would you sit at somebody's house and starve just to look humble? That's not humility. That's something else. I don't know. So we have to make sure that we have the right balance with that. But just, getting more into what we're talking about here. Every week, I like to highlight a different book that's on Audible. And if you're like me, I like to listen to audiobooks because I don't have as much time as I used to really sit down and flip through the pages of a book. Sometimes I like to listen to stuff when I'm on the go, when I'm in the car, going somewhere, when I'm, working out, or even just taking a break and just resting. I need to rest my eyes for a little bit. I want to just sit down and listen to something, right? So audiobooks are really great for that purpose. And the book that I really would like for you to check out for this week is called Give and Take. And it's a revolutionary approach to success, right? So this is a book written by Adam M. Grant. And he is actually one of the authors of the article that we were just looking at before the break. Their article, which is about beating generosity burnout. And there's a lot of really good stuff in this book. Some stuff that I would like to point out. Here's a few quotes from the book. And he says, as Samuel Johnson reportedly wrote, the true measure of a man is how he treats someone who can do him absolutely no good. And that is something to think about, right? Imagine if there's somebody who can do absolutely nothing for you, would you still do it? Would you still do something for someone if there's no way that they could return the favor? Here's another one. The more I help out, the more successful I become. But I measure success and what it has done for the people around me. That is the real accolade. Right? So, again, what he's saying is the more, he's not saying the more people's toes I step on, the more successful I become. No, he's saying the more people that I help out, the more successful that I become. And this is something that a lot of people don't understand. They think that it's always a competition between them and other people. But the most successful people in life are people who know how to collaborate with others, right? These are people who give their gifts, their talents, their time, right? Because they know that at some point they were in need of that as well. They needed it from somebody too. And so let's just say you hear somebody saying, I really just, I want to publish a blog and I just don't know how to do it, right? Or, maybe I wrote something, but nobody's reading my blog, right? So maybe they're saying this to somebody and somebody's listening to it. Let's just say this is somebody who through, Google AdSense and, different avenues through advertising and stuff. This is maybe somebody who's making thousands of dollars from blogging, right? And they're listening to this person talk. Now, they can either choose to ignore it or say, wow, that's tough. I don't know how you're going to fix that problem, but it was nice meeting you, right? They could say that, or they could say, you know what, I used to be in your shoes. I was actually in that position when I first started my blog. Let me teach you some of the things that helped me to become successful, right? Even though this person may not get anything out of it, or even though he might say, wow, well, if this person's blog takes off, he's not going to become my competition, right? But maybe he's not thinking of it like that. Maybe he's thinking, ultimately, I'm going to help somebody because it's the right thing to do. And naturally, one day he's going to need something. And who knows, that person that he helped may be the very person that helps him out. Or it could be someone else. But either way, there's no downside to being generous. There's no downside to helping others out, treating them as you would want to be treated. Here's another quote from the book. He said, this is what I find most magnetic about successful givers. They get to the top without cutting others down. And this is just going into kind of what we were talking about here. So they get to the top without cutting others down, finding ways of expanding the pie that benefit themselves and the people around them. So that's the key right there. He said they are expanding the pie, right? So he's not saying, oh, well, I got this one slice of pie for myself and I need to hold it as closely to myself as I possibly can because I don't want anyone else to eat it. But no, he's saying instead of looking at it like that, look at ways that you can make that pie bigger, ways that you can find ways to include others into what you're doing. Because ultimately, it's not only going to help them, but it's also going to help you too, right? Because the more successful a person is who's connected to you, the more successful you would also become. So trying to keep it all for yourself is really a bad business move. It's actually not wise to do that. It's much wiser to be generous, at the end of the day. One other thing that he said in the book, he said, if we create networks with the sole intention of getting something, we won't succeed. We can't pursue the benefits of networks. The benefits ensue from investments in meaningful activities and relationships, right? So again, it's about motive. It's about your intentions for things, right? So there are plenty of opportunities that people have for, whether it's, networking with people, exchanging information, exchanging ideas. And if you come at it, with the right heart in mind, it's going to benefit everybody. But if one person or, more than one person are only looking at what they can get out of it, it's not going to go anywhere. One other thing he said from the book that I really like, he said, when takers win, there's usually someone else who loses. Research shows that people tend to envy successful takers and look for ways to knock them down a notch. right? But in contrast, when givers like David Hornick win, people are rooting for them and supporting them rather than gunning for them. Givers succeed in a way that creates a ripple effect, enhancing the success of people around them. And that is very true. That is very true, right? So again, if you're the type of person who is known for being ruthless and only caring about yourself, you're putting a target on your back, right? Because there's going to be someone who says, I've had enough of this guy or this lady, right? I'm about to take this person down. I'm about to take their spot. But if you're known as a person who's generous, who opens up doors for others, who is, good at collaborating with people, then not only are people going to trust you, but they're probably going to let you in on some things that they may be doing. And that is something that we really need to keep in mind. If you want to be successful, ultimately, you can't look at it as a me, myself, and I type of thing, right? Everybody should get a piece of that pie. That's the best way to look at success. But more after this, when we come back. You are listening to North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. And this is your host, JC Johnson, for the love of wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. Live from Cleveland, Ohio. We're here every Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. We'll be right back after this.
Hey everybody, you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets.
With your host, Jason Johnson.
Right, welcome back. You were listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And of course, we are on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. All right, so on today's show, we are discussing the wisdom of generosity. And just a couple more things as we are heading towards the end of the hour. We just looked at the book of the week, which is Give and Take, a revolutionary approach to success. And that's by Adam M. Grant. That's an awesome book. Definitely check it out if you get a chance. One more thing from the book. Let's look at one more quote from the book, since we're getting ready to look at some quotes from notable people in regards to this topic. And he said, when we treat man as he is, we make him worse than he is. When we treat him as if he already were what he potentially could be, we make him what he should be. Now that's incredible. That's incredible right there. I want to say that one more time. When we treat man as he is, we make him worse than he is. When we treat him as if he already were what he potentially could be, we make him what he should be. And he attributed that to Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who is a German writer, physicist, biology. He's into biology, art, everything. This is somebody who definitely understands this topic that we're talking about here. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, right? So let's take a look at what some other people have to say in regards to generosity when it comes to giving selflessly. Frank A. Clark says that real generosity is doing something nice for someone who will never find out. Now, that's tough. That's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, because they say, well, if nobody is gonna know, then what's the point, right? Like, because if nobody knows, then that means that I'm not gonna get recognition. That means I'm not gonna get a pat on the back for what I'm doing. However, if that's our motivation, then we're missing the whole point. We're missing the whole point, because doing something for someone is not about how it will look so that people can be impressed by you, but it is about meeting that need, whatever that need is. And that goes into this next one here, which I think is critical. This one is from Khalil Gibran, and he said, generosity is not giving me that which I need more than you do, but it is giving me that which you need more than I do. Because what he's speaking of here is sacrifice. That's a sacrifice. to give something that you need, right? Because if you don't need it, then it's not really generosity, because to you it's garbage. It's not even something that you consider valuable. But imagine if this was something that you desperately needed. Like, there is an example in the Bible of a woman who had only a little bit of food left to eat. And after she ate that one meal, she basically said, I'm going to eat this meal and I'm going to die after that because I don't have any more. But what happened is God told a prophet named Elijah to talk to this woman because he was hungry as well. And he said to the woman, hey, I'm hungry and I need something to eat. And she actually gave him that last meal that she had, which meant that she was not going to have any food for herself. And it was not only for her, it was also for her child as well. And if you think about that, think about how difficult that would be for a mother to sacrifice a meal not only for herself but also for her child. So basically you could say that she needed it way more than the prophet Elijah needed it. But what ended up happening is, because she made that sacrifice and she gave, really without even knowing what was going to happen, it said that not only did she have one meal, but she had an abundance. So she was able to eat well beyond that day, right? She was able to eat for a long time just because of that one act of generosity. It said that, God blessed her to have way more. So she ended up having way more than she had to start with just because she was willing to be generous. And I think that the principle there for us is that if God puts something on our heart to do, right? Maybe there's somebody in your life who God wants you to give to, and you say, man, I really don't want to give to this person because what if I give to them and then I don't have enough for me? Or what if I don't have enough for my family? But the way that things work out, right? It's just a law of sowing and reaping, right? When you do something out of the kindness of your heart, when you make a sacrifice so that someone else can have something, it can only go well for you. It can only go well for you. And it's easier said than done. But when we're faced with those kind of challenges, that's when we are able to really see how generous we are, or how willing we are to trust God or not. Here's another one from John F. Kennedy. And it says, in a time of domestic crisis, men of goodwill and generosity should be able to unite regardless of party or politics. And this is really important. John F. Kennedy is a former president, and as a president, he knew definitely how deep all of this can get when it comes to politics, Democrats versus Republicans, that whole thing. It can get ugly, right? And people will say, well, yeah, this might be a good idea, but I'm not going to help you out because you're a Republican, or I'm not going to help you out because you're a libertarian, or you're a unaffiliated, you're a part of an unaffiliated party or whatever. People will not give to others simply because they don't fall within their own political party. And this is one of the things that even the founding fathers warned against. They warned against there being these factions, because the belief was that if you have this division within the government, ultimately it's going to just divide the whole nation. And they warned against this and said, please do not have political parties. Yet it happened, and it happened from the beginning, and it's been happening ever since. I think George Washington, he was unaffiliated. He wasn't a Democrat or a Republican, but after that, from then on, that seemed to be the thing. And there have been a couple presidents who weren't within one of those two camps, but it's very rare, and it's something that divides the nation, I think, because it gets people focusing on the wrong things. And it's the same in any kind of organization, even in a church, for an example, right? Denominations, all that does is it makes it divided. It makes it to say, well, this group has it right, but that one doesn't. So you should join us because we're the ones who are correctly interpreting what the Bible says about XYZ, right? As opposed to, we are all in this together. We are all believing the same thing. So it doesn't matter if you go to the church down the street, or if you go to my church, or if you go to, a church in Sacramento, or you go to a church in, Uzbekistan, whatever. Ultimately, we're all in this together. That should be the attitude, but unfortunately, that's not how it always is because of divisions like that. So, more on that after this. You are listening to North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you, and I am JC Johnson for the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. We'll be right back.
What's up? It's your girl Queen Z from the Queen Z Show, and you are listening to For the Love of Wisdom.
All right, welcome back. You are listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets, and we are on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. All right, so today we have been discussing the wisdom of generosity. Why we should be generous, what that looks like, and how we can be in the days and times that we're living in. So we took a look at some quotes here, a lot of quotes from notable people, right? We had one quote here from Frank A. Clark. He said, real generosity is doing something nice for someone who will never find out. All right, that was a good one. We had one from John F. Kennedy, where it says, in a time of domestic crisis, men of goodwill and generosity should be able to unite regardless of party or politics, which is very true. And let's see, we also took a look at one which was, it was a challenge, right? This one said, this is from Khalil Gibran. He said, generosity is not giving me that which I need more than you do, but it is giving me that which you need more than I do. And that's a challenge for everybody, I think, right? So how do we do that, right? I mean, it takes a lot of selflessness to do that, and it also takes perspective. It takes some vision to be able to do something like that. So here, let's take a look now at what the Bible has to say about generosity. How can we, take what that says and apply it to our lives? Well, in Acts chapter 20, verse 35 here, it says, I always showed you that you should work just as I did and help people who are weak. I taught you to remember the words of the Lord Jesus. You will have a greater blessing when you give than when you receive. Okay, and that is very true. That is something that Jesus said. It's better to give than to receive, and that can, it sounds nice. Like, okay, that's just it's a cool little saying, something nice to remember. But why? Why is it better? Right? Because it seems like it's better to receive, isn't it? I mean, that means that you get more stuff as opposed to less, because when you give, then it means you have less, right? Well, actually, that's wrong, because it seems that the way that things work out, it's just the law of sowing and reaping. It seems that the more that you end up giving in this lifetime, the more that you get back. And I'm not saying that life is like some sort of big bank that gives you interest on every single thing that you deposit into it. But when you're the type of person who gives selflessly, that same thing ultimately will always come back to you. And you never know when you're gonna be at a place where you're at rock bottom, or where you have nothing, and where you are in need of what others have to give, right? And if you're the type of person who was always holding back, saving for yourself, and you were never the type of person that gave back to others, then when it comes to your time of need, those people that you didn't help guess what? They're not going to be there, right? Probably because they don't even know who you are, because you're not the type of person who's on their radar, because you're not someone who is a giver. But people who give are always taken care of. Here's one from Proverbs chapter 11, verses 24 and 25. It says, "Some people give freely and gain more. Others refuse to give and end up with less." And this is very true. And, if you look at a business owner, some people like Robert Kiyosaki, they would say that the most selfless and generous people in the world are business owners, people who start businesses. Why? Because they have a vision to create jobs for other people. Right now, of course, people working these jobs helps them to meet whatever their bottom line is. However, the fact that they are providing an opportunity for someone else to make money, I mean, that shows a lot of generosity. It shows a lot of selflessness. It shows that they want others to eat, not just them. And there are actually some business owners. I saw a documentary on capitalism. It was by Michael Moore. It was pretty good. And he actually interviewed a couple of business owners who had their business set up in such a way that all of the employees benefited from it in the exact same way that they did. Like, there was this one company, it was a bread company, and the CEO of that company was basically saying, "Hey, I don't make anything more than the workers do. We all make the exact same salary. We just split it. So, it's not like he's just, making millions and they're only making $8 an hour. But no, he spreads the wealth. He wants everybody to eat. And that is a sign of a generous person right there. I think that that's a great business model. I think more businesses should adopt that model. And a couple more scriptures for you. Matthew 6 verses 19 through 21. "Don't store treasures for yourself here on earth, because they can corrupt," right? They get rusted. But it then goes on to say, "Store treasures in heaven." That's what's most important. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 9 says, "Generous people will be blessed because they share their food with the poor." And that is just great advice. I don't even need to elaborate much on that. It's just a good idea, right? Give to others. Don't just save for yourself or for your family, but give to other people too who are in need. That's what life should be about. Because ultimately, even if you accumulate billions or you become the first trillionaire, at the end of the day, what does it really matter anyway if you didn't spend your life helping others? Because you can't take that money with you when you leave this life, right? You can only spend it while you're here. So why not spend it for good purposes? Why not give to charitable organizations or start your own charitable organization, whatever. But anyway, that's all the time we have for today. This is JC Johnson for The Love of Wisdom. See you next week.
Knowledge is power, power is money, and money makes the world go round.
Money, power, respect, I get it, higher, learning, yeah, I'm with it. Only get better with time, keep got on my mind with wisdom, there's no limit. There's no limit, get up and get it. Can achieve the impossible, conquer every obstacle. Exhausted from grinding, constantly pushing, do what they say I could. Life is what you make it. Knowledge is power, don't let them take it.